pig farming was wide in Guyana, and there was a problem with disposal of waste. So we decided to look at the use of biogas technology, where animal waste would have been used to generate methane. This methane could be used for cooking, could be used for refrigeration, could be used for providing lighting in the homes. And in fact, our biogas program was one of the most successful. We had some very interesting experiences with that. The first set of our technical people who were trained in the construction of biogas digesters were trained on the Latin America Energy Network, ULADE. They were trained in Guatemala, and they came back home, and we agreed that the first farm that we would experiment with in the terms of use of this technology was the farm that the GDF had on the east bank of Demerara. They had a big chicken and a big pig farm. And so we constructed our first biogas digester locally, which was to handle this waste from the pig farm at Garden of Eden on the east bank of Demerara. Now, this biogas digester was built above ground, and it towered some 14 feet above the ground. And suddenly we realized that we had a problem loading the biogas digester. It had to be loaded from the top. And it was really funny to see the soldiers with buckets of waste passing it up a ladder for this stuff to be loaded at the top. Subsequently, they more or less improved the technology by using a slurry pump, of course using energy, gasoline, etc., to pump the waste up to the top of the digester. Now it soon became evident to us that something was wrong, that we really we couldn't see farmers basically going through that trouble to load a digester from the top. Then it clicked. These guys who went for training in Guatemala, as you know, Guatemala, the topography is different from Guyana. We are flat and they are hilly. Of course, that design suited Guatemala in that these digesters, you had the pig pens on a mound at the top of a hill, and then they would just feed the slurry down by gravity into the biogas digester. So that's, one of the lessons we learned about contextualizing technology as part of the transfer of technology process. The other one was an even more interesting one. We had an agreement with the government of China to build our capacity in biogas digesters because, the technology basically was born in that part of the world, in China and India, and they had tremendous experience in the use of the technology. We started a very vigorous public education and outreach program about biogas technology. We use videos about the technology that were made in China. We showed this all over the country. And then we embarked, before we get there, we had a Chinese technical team come into Guyana, and with our technicians, they studied the soil conditions, they studied the raw material available, and they came up after a few months with a biogas digester that was suited to our conditions. For one thing, it was built below the ground. You had to excavate and build it. And the other important thing was that all of the material basically used in it was locally produced. The basic material was our clay bricks. As you know, we had the Chinese Belleau clay brick factory at the time, so we were able to use local material. So we developed an indigenous sort of design, depending on local materials as the major input. So we started a vigorous program, and it was highly successful. In fact, uh, we taught farmers to use the slurry from the digester. That's after it had been in the digester for a few days, and before they recharge it with new slurry, they would discharge the old slurry, but then they would use it in their gardens, their kitchen gardens, their farms, if they had a big allotment of land. And this was an excellent organic fertilizer, which after a while, we didn't have to tell them to do that. They saw the benefits. But in the home, we provided gas for cooking, we provided gas for refrigeration. We brought over kits from Brazil to convert refrigerators from electrical to gas, using gas as the fuel. And we also provided all the homes with lights, so that in the evenings they just light their biogas lamp and they didn't have to depend on electrical power. This was from 1984 to 1991 when I left the institute. Now, this program was so successful that Guyana was remarkable in that, apart from China and India, we had the highest per capita sort of ownership of biogas digesters. As I say, this was remarkable. And maybe we had the highest per capita ownership because our population was quite small compared to those of India or China. But the technology had taken root, except in first instances in some of the Indian villages. We couldn't understand why they, after we visited them, explained to them, showed them the videos, etc., why there was hardly any take up in, especially where there were a heavy concentration of Muslim sort of population. And then it clicked. The videos we were showing from China gave people the impression that you had to have pigs, basically, to have a biogas digester. So we had to do a lot of work to explore that myth and say, no, no, no. Their cows would do. The waste from the cow is adequate for the biogas digesters. And once we got over that cultural hurdle, the first one was the technological hurdle. Then the cultural hurdle, we found that we had excellent take-up all along the Berbice coast and the east coast of Demerara. The person who carried that program for us was the late Leroy Court. I really sounded like a historian because most of the people I'm talking about are the late so-and-so and the late so-and-so. But Leroy did a tremendous job in his usual sort of ebullient manner. He was very popular in the villages and really did a lot of promotion. Apart from the private biogas digesters, we also built a couple of institutional biogas digesters. The President's College, for instance, which in the early days had students learning about farming, pig farming, and having looking after a herd of cows. They had a biogas digester. You know, it was residential, and the school was residential, so they had a kitchen, and all of their cooking was done using the biogas from the digester we installed there. In the other institutional biogas digester was under Neming, which at that time was under the purview of the National Service. Here again, we transformed that institution. All of their cooking needs were met from the biogas digester. And the other one I remember was one at the Mahaika Hospital, where we also installed a biogas digester that allowed the institution to use the biogas the methane generated in the kitchen. So we had a really vigorous biogas program. We also had some inputs, technical inputs over those years from the CDB, the CTCS, the Caribbean Technical Consultancy Services, which was headed by a Guyanese in the CDB, Jerome Singh. And through that modality, we managed to get technical assistance through the CDB from GTZ in those days. This was the German Technical Assistance Agency. So our biogas program, I said, was an astounding success.